5 p.m., April 13th, 2021. I call to order the Oconee County Budget, Finance, and Administration Committee meeting. Is there a motion to approve the March 19th, 2021 budget workshop minutes?
So moved. Second.
All in favor? Aye. Before we get started, there's a Utica community meeting at 6:30 tonight, so we're going to have a hard stop at 6 p.m. so council members can attend that. So if we can have a hard stop at 6.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Discussion items, Ms. Brunt.
Yes, sir. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the Budget Finance Administration Committee. In front of you, you'll have your first draft workshop budget. It is an 89-page document. I know that you all can read. I know that this is the first time you've seen it. So we'll basically go over any changes from the previous or current year budget, additions to the new fiscal proposed budget, and address some of the priorities as funding priorities from this year's strategic planning meeting. First, I'll kind of highlight the revenues. Katie, I think the best way for us to highlight the tax revenues is on page 4.
Okay.
I don't know if you can zoom in very well. I'm sorry, I failed to introduce Ms. Samantha Adams. Liddell Price, our finance director, is on a sunny seaside somewhere, hopefully, on vacation this week. So I drafted the scaredest and youngest person I could find in the office to assist with this. And we've done an excellent job, I think, as a team introducing new members of the county employee staff to the budget process, how it works, how this document is formulated, and what the purpose of doing such is. So our revenues, we're looking at a very small increase in actual real estate tax collections next year. Next year is an assessment year. That assessment calculation is very conservative. We're looking at approximately $350,000 increase, which may at first seem like too moderate, but the reassessment, because we delayed for a one-year implementation, will be assessed on the value of December 31st, 2019. Within that calculation, we did take into account for the appeals as well as the 15% cap. So we want to make sure that we did not overestimate real estate collections taxes. And that's that first line up top here. This is on page 4. Watercraft revenues, you'll all see there's a significant increase in that line item. So I met with the auditor several times so that we could evaluate the implementation for estimating the watercraft taxation valuations. There was a change of law in 2019 that only allowed for new purchases to be charged in the calendar year 2020. Last year when we were creating the 2021 budget, we were not confident enough in the minimal amount of data that we had to make an estimation for how much tax revenue would be brought in for the watercraft, and felt that it was safe and conservative for us to save that amount for this year so that we would have a full calendar year as well as 6 months of the previous fiscal year under our belts before putting that number out. Our estimations at this point are $700,000 for an annual basis. It does seem like a lot of money. It was quite an eyebrow raiser to me. She assures me that this is a very conservative estimate and that we can bank on this number. The estimated increases in license and permits and fees. Katie, this one will go back. You okay? Can you zoom in at all?
Yeah. I'll put something on this one. Which page?
If you go back to page 2. Thank you so much. It'll be at the very top of the page on page 2. There we go. That's it, where the green box is.
Okay.
So the increases in license, permits, and fees this year, while noteworthy, are very conservative as well. The largest percentage that we're looking at an increasing is the solid waste tipping fees, building permit fees, and recording fees in the Register of Deeds. The tipping fee increase this year is based on the fact that in the last 18 months, 2 nearby C&D landfills in the upstate have closed permanently. Those customers have nowhere to go but here. As you all know, we've recently expanded the footprint and the permitted area for the C&D landfill to cell number 2, and these revenues will be realized in the extra customers that we get from those 2 other closed landfills. Register of Deeds increases are actually mandated by the state. Those were implemented in August of last year, and we don't see any slowing down in property transfers or recordings. We can go to page 9. Because we know that we're in a boom economy right now and in anticipation for a bust economy should worst case scenario happen, we did not increase income for investments. Y'all can see that the actual numbers have been in excess of $800,000 for a couple of years, but we still felt like it was a conservative and responsible thing to do to estimate those revenues to be just under $500,000. That's the largest and significant change in our revenue stream. If you want to go back to page 1, the very top box on page 1. So you'll see as the property tax, intergovernmental, license permits, fines and forfeitures, so forth, down that first column, those were the only highlightable or significant changes. I know that you guys, this is a lot of information, so basically what I'm going to do is just go over the highlights of everything, any changes that were made that would be noticeable outside of what is quote-unquote norm for just running our operations here. Obviously, y'all can take these books with you. At the end of this, I'll ask if y'all would take them with you and then email back questions or comments, and then on our May 4th meeting, we can address those questions and comments, and that would give y'all adequate time to go through the document. Notable expenditures, and these are on various pages. I don't think we color-coded the, no. Okay, so notable expenditures, and most of these were derived straight from the council priorities, and they are addressed in funding commitments throughout the budget document. So in total, we have 14 new positions in the proposed budget. Is there a new position sheet in here? Y'all should have a position sheet with a green heading across the top. Perfect. Thank you so much. So of the 14, 11 of the positions are directly related to law enforcement and public safety, as that was the #1 priority of council during this year's strategic planning retreat. Law enforcement and emergency services personnel address, of course, the community safety issues that we see primarily in Utica, but the county as a whole will benefit. They both have a positive direct impact on traffic and traffic safety. We've included a position in Parks, Recreation, and Tourism because an initiative outlined the need for the expansion of parks and recreational services in the county. A position was added for communications, media relations within the administration department as per council's directive in February, I believe. And to address our ongoing need for a county engineer or stormwater manager, a position for that has been included. Another position included, which I included in public safety, but the department is planning, is a code enforcement officer. We have enough complaints, we have enough data after having a code enforcement position on the books now for the period of time that we have to justify having another position so that we can start managing some of the complaints we have countywide regarding property issues. Also included in this budget, and I believe, let me see, is a 2% cost of living increase, which is reflected on page 12 in the middle of the page. Thank you so much, Katie. There you go. dead center of the page. That 2% cost of living increase is for all county employees, including elected officials, which does not include y'all, unfortunately, I'm sorry. You're not allowed to vote on a raise that you yourselves receive. And it does not include contract employees, and that is me and Mr. Reed. The cost of living increase at 2% is still a very conservative cost of living increase for our employees. As you all know, that we went a period of years with very nominal increases, and then we've had difficulty retaining staff to other local governments and nearby counties. I did some research over the weekend and realized that our current CPI is at 5.52%, and that our inflation rate from January to March 31st of 2021 is 2.24%. So even with a 2% increase, this is still not keeping up with the expense growth around us. Obviously, I know that that is not our position and that we cannot keep up with the cost of living inflation around us, but we can certainly do our best to make sure that our staff can adequately purchase fuel, bread, groceries, whatnot. Yes, sir.
Can we do like we did last year and tie this to the performance review?
We can.
Thank
We sure can. Thank you so much. Is there anyone want to stop and chat yet? Okay. And I don't mind sharing my written notes page. They're just, some of them are a messy chicken scratch. I'll be happy to type these up and include them in the backup materials for this meeting. Solid waste capital funding. We had some serious safety issues, as well as just a nuisance of traffic last year on Wells Highway related to traffic coming and going from the C&D landfill. This budget request here includes funding for the rerouting of traffic for one-way in, one-way out. There are $330,000 in the solid waste department for a capital expansion on that, for the creation of an entranceway to the landfill, which would be located off of Strawberry Farm Road. The relocation of our current scale to back it up off of the highway so that we wouldn't have the traffic jams that we had last year. When we started looking at the number of complaints specifically to the weeks and months after the tornado, the hours and hours and hours of law enforcement that was utilized for traffic and just traffic control alone justifies the need for us to really and finally address the coming and going at the landfill. I know Mr. McCall isn't here. Thank you, Mr. Davis. Mr. Durham, I hope you don't mind. I'm going to use Mr. McCall's box for a minute, and he was right. Something has to be done. So we didn't think at one time we would be able to permit the vehicular activity coming in off of Strawberry Farm to the backside of the landfill because of the area of the landfill that it is, but it does appear that that is possible. It does appear it's going to be fine for us to do so. That is an estimate. These are all budget estimates. It's very early in the year for us to have concrete numbers. And if you're looking again, you're on the administrator's page. Scroll down just a little bit. There is a line item under administrator. It is 264,822, where I put some contingency funds. If there are overages in any of the estimations for our capital, then, you know, we don't know what building materials are going to be like when this budget is passed. I don't think anybody had any idea what the budget or building materials were going to look like in the last 90 days. Additionally, we have $112,000. This is a 4-year plan that we committed to 2 years ago in our information technology department for increased cybersecurity. That's a process that we start and we just build on every single year. There's some capital electronic equipment replacements, and due to it being cybersecurity, all of that is in the IT department. Another $1 million this year is allocated for necessary spending for fire trucks. As you all know, fire and emergency services vehicles were not included in the capital vehicle replacement plan because the plan is in the future for us to work with the 17 rural independent fire stations as well as the municipalities to begin utilizing part of the designated 2.9 mills that's designated for emergency services and fire to balance out that equipment replacement schedule over time. The Greenway feasibility study, the commitment for that funding is reflected again in the administration office. $50,000 is allocated in the planning budget for a capital improvement plan document, which is step one in anything we do with impact fees. For discussion purposes only, I don't even know what page that's on. Here we go, page 11. The Westminster Magistrate funding. After we had, last year, prior to the audit being completed and the proof of the fund balance being increased by 2.4 million, the finance director and I had met with our financial consultant, Brent Robertson, to discuss funding for the Westminster Magistrate facility. Now, I understand that this is not a topic that has been settled yet, but the funding needed to be addressed in the budget so that we could come up with a concrete way to fund this whichever direction we went. Should not happen, of course, these items will be removed and that money can be allocated back to fund balance. But the recommendation is for us to use $500,000 out of the next year's budget and $500,000 out of fund balance, out of the $2.4 million we just allocated back to fund balance, to fund the entire project and not have to bond out $1 million, because it doesn't seem to be a reasonable thing to do. Other than that, that's the general fund budget. Other than all of the things I just told you, increases in departments, you'll notice that significant increases in certain departments. Some of those increases are directly related to the request for the additional staff. For instance, if we hire 14 people, that means 14 people are going to have to be trained. There will have to be safety equipment purchased. Because 11 of those are in law enforcement, there's extra training money, there's extra allocations for uniforms and, protective equipment, small equipment such as phones and those sorts of things. Minus that, there's nothing significantly different in the operational part of the county side of the budget. The independent funds, the specialized revenue funds, let me see, are all budget neutral, which they have been for years and years. That was the purpose for designating them in the first place. The special Sheriff's Victim Services Fund, Solicitor's Victim Services Fund, generally those through-go assessments and for us to pay the staffing for those specific roles. The 911 Communications Fund, as you all know, we just made a significant purchase for upgrading our 911 communications equipment and software a while back, so there won't be any significant change in that fund. We have not received a funding allocation request from Tri-County Tech yet, but a meeting is scheduled in the next 2 weeks, I believe, for them to do a budget request for that. So that page is not completed at all. This is just a workshop page. Road maintenance, economic development funds. Those funds, as you all know, have the designated millage for them, and we will be presenting those expenditures throughout the course of the year to council for any expenditures that be made from those funds. The final fund is the Rock Quarry Fund. The Rock Quarry has had record days, record months, record weeks, and lo and behold, we have had a record year. We need to talk at some point. I would really like for y'all to take this home and study it. You'll see a yellow tab in your books, our price per ton for product. I did an evaluation, it's been now a year and a half here. We're considerably under on our price per ton for retail rock sales. As long as we continue to be the cheapest guy on the block, we're gonna run out of rock every day. Every single day, we're gonna run out of rock. Today, we had a minor issue at the quarry and had to shut down for a little while. And after speaking with the quarry director and the assistant director, Katie, I'm sorry, that's page 88.
Okay.
It's way down there.
Thank you.
So I think at some point, we'll probably want to come back to y'all and talk about a plan for us to either limit the number of hours that we're open and loading. We threw out the idea of having additional staff. We can work 2 shifts, but I don't know that, we would have to raise the price of the rock this high to have a shift that was MSHA certified we could work 2 shifts, and we couldn't work 2 shifts in the wintertime after time change, unless we wanted to light up the whole quarry, the drive road, all of it. I think at some point, we'd like to discuss with you in a budgetary way, the ability for the quarry to close maybe on a Wednesday afternoon once every 2 weeks. We're getting to the point now where maintenance is becoming a surprise to us. We do have scheduled maintenance days, but the number of hours that we're running the plant makes that maintenance happen before it was previously scheduled. It's almost like when you have a car and you're supposed to get your oil changed every 3,000 miles, but you surprisingly drive to California every day. That's basically how it's looking out there. I don't want to hurt the customers of this county. We certainly don't want to do anything to impede on the businesses that have supported the quarry. But I do think it's time we and the quarry staff, they couldn't be here today because they're running rock this afternoon. I think that we'll bring you 3 options to choose from. And I think really we ought to have a rock quarry meeting and invite some of the customers to come so that we can help understand meeting their needs while being able to maintain this plant. The difference in this plant and the old plant is that you have to shut this plant entirely down to work on it. Where the old plant, you could still make 2 products and work on one part of it. And we did maintenance on a, oh my goodness, level back then, and we really need to take care of the machine that we have up and running now. With all that said, again, we've had record days, record months, and a record year for the rock quarry, and that is reflected in a $1 million transfer back to the general fund. Now, originally, the quarry document said that the quarry was to transfer an amount equal to 2 mills, up to 2 mills is what it said a long time ago. And I think we're getting closer and closer to that mark, and that's a testament to the hard work and dedication of the quarry staff. The only other document the fee schedule that I wanted y'all to look at for pricing, do we tab that one or just put a paper in? I think we put a paper in. We have a loose paper. Page 65, I think it is. Yes, a green tab. So, going through our fees, we hit a record sales year in building permits last year. And I was actually having a luncheon with the staff talking about how proud of them I was and just giving some kudos here and there. And one of the staff members said, it's amazing we brought in that much money considering we're operating on 2007 fees. And I was a little taken aback. I did not know this. So in the document you have here, we want to add a line, and it's not in this book now, because we want to, again, do all of our homework, dot our I's, cross our T's, make sure we're not impinging on any small business or contractor. But our fee schedule that we're currently using is $96.83 for new construction, and that's per square foot. That would be a percentage of permit cost per square foot, and that is from August 2008. Since we adopted the new building codes and now we're more in line with the International Code Council, our recommendation would be for us to move up to August 2019, and that is $130.58. And it's a percentage of that. This is not a total cost per square foot per payment for fee. What that would do, though, is bring our building permit fees better in line in calculation with the numbers that we'll be utilizing for our reassessment, which is where our tax data would be derived from, so that those two things would be in better balance. We'll be bringing that fee schedule back to you on the May 4th meeting. Do I have any questions? Is there anything specifically I'd like me to discuss, talk about?
Yes, ma'am. If I can find it again. This green fee or green fee study.
The Greenway study, yes,
Yeah,
sir.
there you go. I don't know who has the privilege to your budget, but Saturday morning, someone spoke to me about the $75,000 that shouldn't be used for a study. It should be used for the trails. And they said if you needed a study, that Salem had already conducted a study several years ago, and it could be obtained from the city of Salem.
Okay. And Mr. Hart, I did say on the record that we estimated the cost for that study to be $75,000, I think 2 previous meetings. Obviously, I didn't have the budget docket made yet, but that was an estimated cost for the study at the time. Obviously, if it doesn't cost that much, or if council decides not to get one, then that money would revert back to fund balance as well. But I will be happy to reach out to the town of Salem. I had no idea they'd already done the study.
Is this study just for the town of Salem, or is this for the entire county?
The Greenway feasibility study in the proposed budget is for the entire county.
Okay, I just wanted to confirm
I'm
that.
assuming the town of Salem one is just for the town of Salem, but if it had a connection point at some other place, it would be
Sure.
nice to get those two things in congruent together.
We can piggyback off of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Makes perfect sense. I did not know that, Mr. Hart. Thank you.
The permit fees you was talking about, you said, I'll just take a note. $96 per square foot is what the permit fee is?
Our current,
Yes.
we are currently charging,
That one, I'm sorry, I couldn't find it. See, in this printout,
we don't have this one. Can I make some copies for you? I have it right here. I'm sorry. I thought we had multiple copies.
So, you and all this.
10. Thank you. I'm sorry, Mr. Durham. I thought that was a two-sided copy you had. I apologize.
and then also, I think it's a great idea about bringing people in that deal business with the Rock Crusher about their needs. Because I've spoken to you before, it's unbelievable how many people call Ted about the Rock Crusher. I mean, it's almost every day, but we gotta be careful about raising prices in hopes of suppressing demand, you know? The Crusher's making a lot of money, but if we can find a way, administratively or some way, to meet the demand that's out there, we'd make even more money.
Yes, absolutely. And the reason I thought the meeting with specific Cory customers is that the Cory is a specific thing. You only go there to buy one thing. It's not like Walmart. You don't go get toilet paper and grits. It's a one product market. Now, of course, we do have different products that we sell there, but we have a set customer base. We very rarely see a one-time user come to the Cory. And if we do, it's for, something very small, like doing a farm gate or, but generally we have repeat customers, and we have enough customers that have large enough accounts to where we would significantly impact those businesses and their lifestyles if we made a change without their input. I think we may have some hard decisions to make coming up in the future, but I think if they all know that we're at least listening and they can hear each other, which is also important, that we'll find a solution to deal with the number of tons that we're selling. So the machine is running at red line basically 90% of the time. You would never run your car red line 90% of the time. They're not, it's meant to do it, but you have to change that oil. You have to check on those bearings. You have to make sure the dust is outside of the screenings. So we're going to have to find a way that we can manage our growth. Now, when I said a price increase too, just for the record, because I do realize that could be like a big hair raiser thing. There are some market and materials that we are perfectly in line with, like Crusher Run we're in line with, asphalt sand we're in line with. There are other products, number 3s, number 5s, number 57s, which are certain size rocks. There are certain products where we are grossly underpriced for the product that we have. Thank you so much, Alan. Katie for the record. And Mr. Durham, that's what is circled on the bottom right there. Thank you.
We still contract out commercial building plans,
Yes,
studies?
yes. We do. We use RCI. I realize this is a lot. Obviously, I'm open for questions at any time. Most of you know that you can call me day or night with anything. But again, I'd really like for you to take the time, go through what the document here, the drafts. If you have any questions that you want to submit, I'll compile all the questions and have the answers. We'll have them in writing for the May 4th meeting. And that way we can address those both in writing, that can be included in the backup material, and on the record so we can have a conversation. And of course, I'm ready for a conversation now if you guys are.
Any questions?
I just, Mr. Chair, I appreciate Ms. Brock and all the staff members for working on putting this balanced budget together. And I'm sure as we study this, we will certainly have more questions and requests. But really do appreciate your hard work on this. I know it takes nights and weekends to get this kind of stuff pulled together. And
We had a lot of help.
a lot of help.
We did have a lot of help. This is a team effort. It's definitely a team effort. And honest to goodness, I think this year was a little bit different, and with having moments of clarity. I know we've done a strategic plan retreat every year, but this year we had more initiatives that were voted on by more council members for directives to fund these commitments. And that is exactly what this budget document set out to do. Yes, sir.
And I'm sorry I missed it. What is the grand total right here?
The grand total, now this is for the general fund. The grand total is $56,723,000, and, no, I'm sorry, $56,723,020.
And this is with no tax increase
That is absolutely no tax increase.
for the second year in a row.
Correct. Second year in a row.
So what is that, about an 8% increase?
It
over
is
the
a
final from last year?
7.78% increase, yes, sir. And you'll see the most significant increases on page 2 and 3, where it's broken down. Don't me wait on, maybe scroll down just a little bit. So department and function, there we go. So this first whole section here, and I'm gonna hold my book up so y'all can see what I'm talking about here. This first section after one of the very large blocks, this is your general government section. There was an increase of $897,000 in general government. Your most significant increases were in public safety, which was a $1.8 million increase, and transportation and public works, which was a $1.2 million increase.
And as the revenue comes in, it's showing the growth in the county.
Yes, sir, it is.
And unfortunately, we have to provide services for that growth, right? So
So if you look at the
as
growth in the
growth comes
expenditures,
in, we've got
they're
more
pretty
emergency
close,
services, more
yes.
sheriff's officers needed. I mean, it's just, function of growth.
yes, it is. And if y'all remember, year before last, we had a hiccup in our software communication between permit closeout and the assessor's office. And we internally realized that we were not properly assessing certain properties that had come through in the previous 2 years when we did an upgrade in our software. So there is some additional revenue reflected in our staff's ability to recognize, wait a minute, that number just didn't look right to me. So we've got a lot clearer language in our departmental communications, and when I don't mean, employee to employee. But we had a certain software that did this, we had another software that did that, we have different software that does this. Now we have a way more streamlined communication process between our computer systems. And I mean external softwares, like Citizen Serve, the software that we utilize in planning and building codes, can now be utilized by members in the assessor's office. So when a certificate of occupancy is realized, they know that it's time for us to do an assessment and an evaluation on that property. Where our old software was like if it had a temporary CO or if it had a TCO on it, and we didn't manually go in and say, okay, send this to the assessor's office now, then we didn't calculate that new property being on the tax base. And Mr. Hart, you brought this up, 3 years ago? We had some issues with communications and property transfer records. You would go on a line and see that the property record reflected an owner 2 years ago when it had changed hands 1 year ago. So we have a lot better internal communications, and this is a more reflective actual budget than we've been able to do in the past based on the just being more accurate information provided to us from the systems that we're using.
Mr. Chairman, if I may. A lot of the expenses that have continued to increase is involved around our staff and around safety between fire and police. And I know as we have continued to add deputies from the SRO time period to now and added paid firemen, it has actually made this county more attractive to those from the outside from an economic development standpoint, to those that have lived here all their life like I have, and those that are moving here. So, council's definitely headed in the direction that I feel is correct. It is a safer community. It is a better community, and we're staying ahead of that and maintaining staff. I know those reports, I'm excited to see those as we've continued to, especially on the deputy standpoint on getting those to where they should have been done a long time ago. So that's been a good thing, and giving fire the support that they deserve as well. So safety, if you look at police and fire as part of our budget, I know in our last strategic planning, it is a huge piece of the pie. But it's very well worth the investment, probably the best investment that we make for how we live our daily lives. So I appreciate council's initiatives in that. And those that do that service very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other questions or comments? I want to also thank Ms. Brock, you and the staff for putting this together. I think it's a feat every year to do this and get the input from all the departments and put it all in one document.
It's a bizarre process. I think Sam has done great drinking from the water hose, though, or fire hose, rather. The look on her face doesn't seem to be quite as terrified each day as we progress.
Good.
Right. And Mr. Durham, I know this is the first time, and if there's anything, and this is a lot, I'd be happy to provide previous year's budgets. I don't even mind giving you my draft notes, so if you want to read through them. And that doesn't exclude anyone from that, but that being the first time, this is a lot of information. I understand that.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Is there a motion to adjourn?